Hello and welcome to Obinna TV. This is the Daily Show KE, where I basically look at the top issues of the day in Kenya, Africa, and the world. So for now, this is what I have prepared for you today. So what next for Kenya's urban mainstream media? That is Eric Latiff left Space FM and is going to join Nation FM. So what next for Kenya's urban radio? Then Uhuru factor in Matiangi's 2027 bid. So basically, President Uhuru is going to back the bid of Fred Matiang'i for the presidency in 2027. Of course, remember, Fred Matiang'i was the one who was literally running the Uhuru government. So basically, what does that mean? And then, of course, Tom talks stuff on immigration as he assumes office, poses all aid, all foreign aid, all US aid to foreign countries except Israel. And then, of course, I'm going to look at Isabel dos Santos, once Africa's richest woman, is going to vie for the presidency in Angola. And then, still in Africa, Cameroon's Paul Biya, who has been in office for the last 42 years, who has been president for the last 42 years, looks set to stand, is set to stand for a seventh term for presidency. So, what does that mean? That is, Cameroon's Paul Biya is set to stand for a record seventh time. So he could be president, but next year he will be 92. So by the time he leaves office, he will be 99 years old. So that is essentially a lifetime president. So basically, let's start with the media landscape. Eric Latiff leaving Spice FM for Nation FM, and of course, the other person, it is Janet Mbukwa, who is making a comeback to NTV. So basically, now NTV seems to want to take on Royal Media, basically, for the audiences. So then, Eric Latiff. So what does that mean? First of all, Eric Latiff pioneer talk radio in Kenya. Of course, he was not the first one. NTV, and that is Spice FM was not the first to start this. That is this programming, morning programming of talk radio. It is just talk and no music for the whole 4 hours, 6 to 10 a.m. It is not Space FM that began. Other stations such as Nation FM, I think, really began on this trend, but then they never. Nation FM and never executed it well. Remember, the trick is not just to have the idea, but to execute it well. So Nation FM looked for some PhD fellows to be able. They thought maybe if you had a PhD, then you could be knowledgeable in all areas. But then, of course, they had that, but it never succeeded. People just were never receptive to it. It is not like classic one of. It is not like a Spice FM where people just naturally resonated with Eric Latiff. Of course, he had his two other hosts, that is Ndo Oko and Siti Muga. So I don't know whether it is Siti Muga that is going now to anchor the program, or maybe whether it is Ndo Oko, the Nigerian turned Kenyan influential person. So basically, right now, Eric Latiff is going to go to Nation FM. So what does that mean? What does that mean? First of all, Urban Radio is undergoing turmoil because this the same audience that this radio are chasing is the same audience that is on TikTok, that is on Facebook, that is on X, that is on YouTube. So basically, they can get a variety of content, and they have the money. They have really, they have the money to buy the bundle. So then they can easily they can easily get that content. So basically, I think right now a lot of urban radio is undergoing turmoil. So I think what needs to happen, this urban media must move to commentating, 24 hours commentating. I don't think streaming music, everyone is getting music through YouTube, through maybe Spotify, through Audiomack, through Boomplay. So they are not so fixated. Radio was where you went to if you wanted to listen to the latest jams, but that's no longer the case. We can't get it in a variety of ways. So radio now has been reduced to talk show, to talk radio. That's what I would say is the future of urban radio, in talk shows. Look at the way American talk shows are going. Basically, they are hosted by people. You have Dan Bongino, you have basically Brian Kilmed, you have Brian Russ. Basically, these are people that are commentating 24 hours a day, and so that's, I think, is the future of urban radio in Kenya. it's about commentating. And so when this happens, I think that urban radio should now quote these people. And the beauty about urban radio, if you capture that audience, they have a very high disposable income. Look at the ads that Classic 105 does. And look at the ads that Capital FM used to do. It used to have just a market share of 2%. And that is Capital FM, but it drew in profits of about 800 million shillings during its heyday, or during the time of Linda Holt, when Chris Kirubi was just buying the station. Capital FM used to have a market share of just 2%, but there were high-end listeners who maybe were going on holidays abroad, who took their kids to international schools, who had multi-million shilling savings, and so advertisers could tap into that market. Remember, advertisers look at the 24 to 55 age group. That is what they are most concerned about, the 24 to 55 age group, which they deem as being necessary for them to be able to have a high purchasing power. And that's why the investors in urban radio made a lot of money. Look at Classic 105 these days with the ratchet relationship content. They are making money, especially for women who are not invested in the deep issues of the day. For women, I think for Classic 105, they make lots of money. They talk about relationships all day, of course, unless something big has happened. Classic 105 usually talks about relationships throughout. Maybe when they are mandamano, or when someone prominent has died of cancer, then they will digress a bit. Or maybe when there is high level corruption and Kenyans are crying, maybe they will digress a bit and be able to maybe change the topic of the day towards maybe the deep issue of the day. But for the most part, they talk about relationships, and that's what they feel maybe a lot of women, working women want. So a lot of women, I think, take over from the soap operas. Remember, Kenya is a TV market. Kenya is a TV market. A TV market is along with Mexico. Kenya is a TV market. A TV market is where essentially you are going to that is people are so stressed out, they don't want to discuss the deep issues of the day. They just want entertainment, and that's the market that Kenya is for. So basically, that's why Kenya is a TV market, and in a TV market, it is entertainment that sells. So Kenya, sometimes Classic 105 is accused of being a soft porn station, but of course, the owners of the station disagree. They have been summoned many times to the Communication Authority of Kenya, but they do oppose that. They say they legitimately discuss relationship relationship topics only. They are not a soft porn station. So that's it about Eric Latiff and his move to Classic to Nation FM. So maybe remember, Nation FM had been closed sometime between 2016 and 2021. That was the time Nation FM was closed down. So basically, is it possible that Nation FM will come back in some form to rival Space FM? Will Nation FM come back at some point in the future to rival Spice FM? So I think this is the time now to be able to assess whether this is going to be really true at all. And so I think that right now what we need to do then is to basically encourage that urban radio content is still gold, content is still king. So basically this is a good thing, especially for the middle class. I really would have thought that maybe they would have given Space FM a white pass, but they didn't do that. And so this is a club for the middle class. They are really beginning to show to be engrossed in the deep issues of the day. Because remember, for the most part in Kenya, and I think in most African countries, the political process has always been a pact between the super rich, who provide the funds and make the rules, and the downtrodden poor, who act as the foot soldiers of the super rich. It is now the middle class has always been left out of the equation, but now the middle class is getting involved through such things as Twitter Spaces, X Spaces, and through such things as urban radio, that is Spice FM. The urban media is getting the middle class is getting involved in the deep issues of the day. And now what's the next logical step? They need to go and take their IDs and register to vote. And I think this is this is by and large a good thing for the middle class, because usually the middle class is usually not interested in politics. They have taken their kids to a private school, basically because the public schools, the quality of education is poor. They have taken their kids to a private school. They have really they have taken private healthcare insurance. So basically, and they live in gated communities. So when the power goes out, they can't simply they can't simply tap onto and they can't simply tap into the generator. So basically, the Kenyan middle class has shown that yes, we are middle class. We are coming back to be involved in Kenyan politics, and that's a good thing. They think about a country such as the United States. It is the middle class that sustains the ideological politics of that country. You have presidents coming in and then they fundraise for them. The middle class fundraise for these people. That's how politics of America is done. You have people who have just ideas, but then you have them going to basically going to people to fundraise money, and then of course that's where they get the money to be able to carry out a campaign that is in the multi-millions of dollars. That's how sometimes multi-billion of dollars. That's how the middle class in America gets to campaign. Even for Trump, as a billionaire as he is, he still had to fundraise money for. But for Africa, for Kenya, we fundraise money from drug dealers, from money launderers, from corrupt thieves. That is why Kenya does not seem to move forward. And I think it is high time the middle class sponsors a candidate. Maybe we need a labor candidate because all the middle class at least are in some form of a profession. Maybe we need that is the middle class to be able to be engaged in some profession and basically to be engaged in the deep issues of the day in governance. Look at the healthcare plan, look at the infrastructure plan, look at the jobs plan, look at the education plan, and then from there we can really take Kenya forward. So that's it about that is the middle class being able. That is it really about the middle class being able to sustain the politics of the country. So that comes with a new media station such as Space FM, and of course Nation FM also wants to go in that direction. That's why they have approached Eric Latiff to be able to anchor news, to steer the Nation FM morning drive towards that line where they'll be talking about the deep issues. Remember, Eric Latiff has to compete with the likes of Jeff Koinange and of course some of the other ones. And then another story that is coming up, Uhuru factor in Matiangi's 2027 bid. So it appears that President Uhuru Kenyatta, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, wants Matiang'i, Fred Matiang'i, to stand up for the elections in 2027. So basically, remember, Fred Matiang'i was the de facto prime minister during the time of Uhuru Kenyatta. He literally was the de facto prime minister. That is Fred Matiang'i. He was the one who used to whip all the cabinet ministers into shape. Remember, Eric Matiang'i was an unknown figure, but then was appointed as the education minister, as the cabinet secretary for education. That's how he gained national limelight, by cleaning up the education sector, especially the exam results. There had been a cause that the quality of the grades was going down. Everyone was getting an A. So basically, this was how Matiang'i came to the limelight. Everyone was getting an A, and so they had to figure out. So Fred Matiang'i figured out that there was too much leakage. I think that emanated from the 2015 KCSE, where there was even a KCSE paper that was shown on TV only to appear as the exam in the following day. So basically, you can see how Fred Matiang'i, I think it was under Jacob Kaimenyi. So basically, Fred Matiang'i came up and, of course, was transferred to the Ministry of Education, cleaned that up basically, and had 141 A's only in the country. So basically, there were only 141 A's in the country during that year in 2016 KCSE, and I think that is why maybe Uhuru saw late in him, and he managed to release the results not in February but in December, just 1 month after the end of the exams. And so basically you can see how Fred Matiang'i cleaned up the education system. And so previously schools used to get up to 200 A's. A single school could have up to 200 A's, but it is the Matiang'i that came along and basically reduced the number of A's from 200 that is 232 from I think about 6,000 to just 141 A's. So schools which in the previous year had about that is had about 200 A's, they just had 5 or 6 A's only. So basically that's how Fred Matiang'i, of course some will say that he failed too many students, but then on the upside, all the students that got above grade C plus were qualified to go to university, and maybe that's what killed the parallel program. That is, all students that got above grade C plus were eligible to go to university, and that's how Fred Matiang'i revived the education sector in the country. So that's why President Uhuru then transferred him to the Ministry of Interior. So that's how he then was able to institute changes in the Interior Ministry, because I think the two major ministries in a country are usually the Interior, that is the security docket, and the treasury docket. So either you gain power through money, and that is running the treasury, or through security by the power of the bullet through the Ministry of Security, or they used to call it internal security, but now they call it interior security. And that's why maybe President William Ruto has appointed his close friend, that is Kipchumba Murkomen, to be in charge of the interior ministry. So you can see how Fred Matiang'i literally came to the limelight, shaped the cabinet of Uhuru Kenyatta, and became the de facto prime minister. But now Uhuru Kenyatta is backing Fred Matiang'i for the top seat. Uhuru Kenyatta is backing Fred Matiang'i for the top seat, just a little. But now Uhuru Kenyatta is backing Fred Matiang'i for the top seat. So what is this going to mean? What is this going to mean? It will mean that basically Fred Matiang'i, Fred Matiang'i is a crisis mode of a leader. Basically, he's not transformative per se, but a crisis mode of a leader comes in when things are so bad they need to be cleaned up, and you don't need a kind of democracy in such. Someone arrives in an airport, sees the people are not doing their jobs well, and fires up people there and then, and appoints another one. I think you had Tanzania's President John Pombe Magufuli, who was also a crisis mode of a leader. So a crisis mode of a leader usually just comes to clean up the act and make sure people follow the rules. Of course, there are other people that are visionary, that are transformative, but Matiang'i Fred comes in as a crisis mode of a leader. So I think that his support for Fred Matiang'i will come with a lot of money. Money will pour in from the Kenyatta family. Remember, the Kenyatta family, I think by the time he was getting out of office, he was a dollar billionaire. So you can imagine he will be instituting a lot of money to go towards that is the Matiang'i bid for the presidency. Then basically that is it. And I think something we should address is campaign financing. That's something we should be addressed. We should be addressing this issue about one person contributing 10 billion shillings towards a campaign kit. Then that shows they are the power behind the throne. They are the power behind the throne, and so we don't need that. So when they go to office, they want to recoup their money, and so that is why we need to be able. I think the likes of Jimmy Wanjigi, I think it is in 2017, Jimmy Wanjigi funded the NASA campaigns in 2017. Then, of course, the party of Raila Odinga, the coalition of Raila Odinga. But I think there needs to be concerted effort in order to make that is campaign financing, to how people contribute towards financing an election. And I think if we do that, then there will be. But I think we need really politics of ideology. We cannot be doing personality politics. Politics of ideology is something that we need to be following through. It is something that we must endeavor to have. That is politics of ideology. We need just two parties in every African country. In Kenya, we need just two parties, a left of center party that is about equality of opportunity, where you bring everyone to the same starting lineup, and then a right of center party that is about individual dynamism, where you are encouraged to pull yourselves by your own bootstraps. I think that's how to be able to that's how to be able to remake that is to remake the political process in the country. Otherwise, it is just a cult of personality where tribe A versus tribe B, region C versus region D, and that is where the difference between the ruling party and the opposition party in Africa is not in tribe, is not in ideology, a left of center or a right of center party. It is in tribe and region where they draw their support from, and that is why our politics fails, because we conduct politics of personalities. That is why we are not going anywhere. Our parties are briefcases. Our political parties are mere election vehicles. They are not centers of ideological thought and opinion where basically you have a left of center party that is a pro-worker party, and maybe you have a right of center party that is pro-business. I think that's how we should organize our politics around such things, and I think that is how then we must organize our politics. Otherwise, it is not good of the kind of political process we have in the country. It is just not good. Basically, if we had politics of ideology, we would have seen radically different faces, and that's how Kenya does not get to be a $1.6 trillion economy. By now, Kenya should have been a $1.6 trillion economy. Look at the Asian Tigers. We were at the same level of development as them in the 1960s, but they put their house in order, put politics or personality aside, and went for politics of ideology, politics of ideas. Of course, some of them are authoritarian, such as Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, but in exchange for being authoritarian, they produce economic dividends to their people. They lifted their countries from third world to first world in just under 25 years. So basically, I think we need a politics of ideology, politics of issues. So this talk about politics of personality, it is not good, and this is why our leaders want to be kingpins, because they know when you are the kingpin of Rift Valley, all deals are done through you. When you are the kingpin of Western, when you are the kingpin of Nyanza, all deals are done through you. When you are the kingpin of Ukambani, all things are done through you. And this politics of kingpin is what has killed ideological politics. Look at someone like Kivuza Kibwana, very self-effacing, someone that has all the solutions to Kenya's or even Africa's problems. But because he comes from a small place and he is not the kingpin of Ukambani, we don't give him much thought. And so he returns to lecture in the, I think he returned to lecture at Daystar University when he could be a very formidable president. And I think that is why we need politics of ideology. Look at Kivuza Kibwana, look at Mukisa Kitui. Mukisa Kitui basically is the has economic brain. I think was one of the inner circle of President Kibaki that revived the economy really fast. But I think because he's not the kingpin of Luya, he does not come in with substantive votes on his back. Then we basically overlook him. Yes, I know sometimes political parties need a personality to rally around. Maybe just like the Democrats rallied around Obama, or maybe like Republicans are rallying around Donald Trump. But I think I think for the most part, what needs to happen is that the politics of kingpin must come to an end. That politics of kingpin has really killed the Kenyan dream, and it is essential that we don't follow that route. I just think that it is essential we don't follow that politics of kingpin. So the next story I'm going to look at is Isabel Dos Santos, once Africa's richest woman, is going to run for Angola's president. That is Isabel Dos Santos. So what does she bring to the table? Basically, she became the richest woman in Africa after her dad, that is Eduardo Dos Santos, former president of Angola, placed her as the head of the Petroleum Revenue Authority. So she diverted public funds to her own personal bank accounts. She diverted public funds to her own personal bank accounts, and the absurdity is that it is a Portuguese bank that was helping him to do exactly that, that it was a Portuguese bank that was helping him to do exactly that. So basically, we need politics of issues, politics, and we need to be able to root out corruption in Africa. Africa is very, very rich, but our money is stolen by a few elites. They corrupt in Japan, they commit suicide because of the shame they have caused society. They corrupt in China. They are shot by the firing squad because of the sins they have done to society. They corrupt in Europe and America. What do? They resign because as they wait for the long arm of the law to catch up with them. But what happens to the corrupt in Africa? The corrupt in Africa are celebrated and re-elected back to office. Why? Because they could be corrupt, but they are one of us. They could be very much big, big thieves, but they are one of us. And look at the judiciary. When someone steals chicken, what do? They give him a 7-year jail time when someone steals a bicycle. But when someone steals billions of shillings, they can bribe the judge. They say if you can bribe the judge, why hire a lawyer? If you can bribe the judge, why hire a lawyer? That is a common saying in town, and that really needs to change. So I think according to the Zambian economist, Dr. Dambisa Mo, she says that Africa has lost at least $1 trillion to corruption since independence. That's what Dr. Dambisa Moore says. That is, Africa has lost at least $1 trillion to corruption since independence. And I think when you account for corruption outflows from Africa, then Africa is a net donor to the world. It is not a net recipient in aid. So basically, we are very, very rich. Look at a country like Nigeria. It has lost about $400 billion in cash. That is in cash, not physical assets, but in cash to corruption since 1960. That could translate to a lost GDP of about $4 trillion. And that's why Nigeria, in 2018, Nigeria surpassed India as the country with the most absolute poor people in the world. And I think for Kenya, we could be a $1.6 trillion economy, very much so. But because we are diverting public resources to private bank accounts, that's why we are not able to be that shining city in the hill in which everyone can look into. So basically, Africa is a deathbed because of corruption. So you have a daughter of a former president, Isabel dos Santos, once Africa's richest woman, going to vie for the presidency in Angola. So once you get money, it appears the next logical step is to get the power, because money doesn't care, it falls on whose hands. And then still another story from the Daily Show. Cameroon's Paul Biya, Cameroon's President Paul Biya is going to stand for a 7th term for the presidency. So what caste Africa? If you have such an Nigerian going to vie for the presidency, why can't he return and have a good time with his grandkids and great-grandkids? This is the time for him to rest. He has ruled the country for 42 years without nothing to show for it. What more will he do for Cameroon that he has not done for the last 42 years? Remember, before he was president, he was the prime minister for 7 years before he became the president, and that is something that we must interrogate. Basically, that is something that we must really interrogate. That is, what will Paul Biya do for Cameroon now that he was not able to do in all those years? So basically, we need to be able to have Africa that is managed under the rule of law. Elections, remember, the underlying theory of presidential term limits is that it is better to truncate the rule of a saint, however Mandela they are, than to extend the reign of a despot, maybe like Paul Biya. That is the underlying theory of presidential term limits. That is, it is better to extend the reign of a despot than it is better to truncate the rule of a saint, however Mandela they may be, or than to extend the reign of a despot, maybe like Paul Biya, maybe like Museveni, maybe like Isaias Afwerki. So basically, the African big man dictator has not realized that the essence of a great dancer is in leaving the stage while applause from the crowd is loudest. That's just it. The African big man dictator has not realized that the essence of a great dancer is to leave the stage when applause from the crowd is loudest. So that is Cameroon's President Paul Biya to stand for a seventh term for presidency. So that is just a news that will make you choke up a bit. And then, of course, in America, Donald Trump, what will Africa stand? How does Africa fare in Donald Trump's second presidency? So basically, I think Donald Trump is going to be a solutionist, maybe even racist. Sometimes he's going to be a solutionist. So he is going to really campaign that Africa is really a footnote in America's foreign policy. Whether it's a Republican or Democratic administration, Africa is always a footnote in America's presidency. So basically, Africa does not fare much in America's foreign policy. Yes, there are some programs such as vaccines, ARVs, I think, under President George W. Bush, where they brought ARV drugs, AIDS drugs to Africa, of course, but now Donald Trump has cut off, and that is the supply of American funds to WHO, World Health Organization. He has cut off the funds for the Paris Climate Agreement to fund climate change programs, and of course, Donald Trump has cut off aid except Israel, and so basically that means Africa will not get much aid. I suspect he could also cut off the AGOA, that is Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which allows African manufacturers to access the US markets cheaply. So basically, Donald Trump is a president like no other, but it is going to be a time of upheaval in America. Basically, they just don't know what sort of a country could have. He could destroy the American democracy as we know it. Basically, he could remove all the constitutional guardrails of America. He could remove the constitutional guardrails of America, the ones that keep our president in check. Donald Trump could do away with them, and so that's why it's going to be a very. We are going to be watching. We are going to be watching his presidency so closely because he is just one man. That basically, but I think the rise of Donald Trump was really to do with white anger backlash on how the America elect a black president. It was really a white anger backlash that whites were losing their power in America. So I think they have fought back, and of course they are going to dismantle such programs as DEI, that is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was that. DEI was really that minorities should be included. So it appears many white Americans feel that if a black gets a position, then a worthy white has been passed over. That's what many white Americans seem to be telling us, that if a minority gets a coveted position, then a worthy white male has been passed over. So that's some kind of superiority complex that powers the emotions of Donald Trump. And of course, he's going to hang on to that. He is going to go on and basically hang on to that he is basically a person that is going to he is a person that is going to very much hold on to that thought that basically DEI efforts are going to be out. He has told the universities to dismantle the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, not for the culture wars, but for the fact that if a minority gets a position, then some whites feel you don't deserve that position. Maybe you should be in the slave field. That's what some white Americans feel, and that's why they elected Donald Trump, because Donald Trump told them that these are the enemies. And remember, whereas America has been welcoming of immigrants from all over the world, whereas immigrants have constantly renewed America, but that America was purposely built to be a European-centered state in which white Anglo-Saxons would call the shots. So it appears that power, they were losing that power, and that's why they came out in full force to ensure that Donald Trump gets back white power in America. So basically, America, far from being that Donald Trump had hoped would be a post-racial America, that far from what President Obama had hoped, will be a post-racial America. That is not the case anymore. The fact is that America is sliding backwards. Democracy, I think a Swedish democracy group said America was going to be was a backsliding democracy. So it appears the racial hotlines are still there, and that America really right now has to find its soul. I don't think it is the leader of the free world anymore. It needs to do more. I don't think America is the leader of the free world anymore. It just needs to look back and see where the rain started beating them, where the races can coexist. But it appears that white America power structure will not see the end of white power in America. So that's what Donald Trump. He could argue that, oh, I'm not racist. I have hired black employees, but from his past, where he denied some black people even a tenancy at his estate, at his properties. So you can see what kind of president Donald Trump is going to be. I think he was elected on the basis of the economy, but he added $8 trillion to American debt. So I don't know where they get this notion that Donald Trump is better for the American economy. I just think that Donald Trump is the embodiment of the American white power structure that sees that any upliftment of minorities, black and brown Americans, is an affront to how America's state was designed. But remember, America was built on near Native American extinction, basically, and black slave labor. So he cannot run away from that. However much he wants to claw back on that, Donald Trump cannot run away from that. And so he is creating an oligarchy between Elon Musk and President Trump. It is now billionaires that are surrounding Donald Trump, and these billionaires, so for instance, Elon Musk is going to be the president, is going to be the chair the Department of Government Efficiency. So at what point is he a government servant, and at what point is Elon Musk that is serving Americans? At what point is he going to be looking for contracts for SpaceX, and at what point will Elon Musk be serving Americans? But of course, he gave about $200 million to the Trump campaign, and so it is payback time. So once again, America is going to be a third world country, where it is going to be a third world country, where basically it is just emotions. It is racial hotlines that are really on the front, and it is not good. It is a sad day to be an American, but I hope the people will be able to rise above that, go back to state and local politics. And I think for the Democrats, the next leader must come from state and local politics. Look at Barack Obama in 2004. He was a mere state senator, but then was able to campaign hard, and then became the keynote speaker. First of all, it is John Kerry that gave him a chance to speak at the Democratic National Convention, DNC, in 2004. That's how the world knew Barack Obama, and I think that is the speech that made Barack Obama. That is how Barack Obama became who he is. He was drawn from local politics, and I think that is how Democrats need to be able. They need to go back to state and local politics and Trump-proof America. That is how they are going. That is how America is going to be. That is how America is going to be really that shining city on the sun. So that's it about now. And then in ideas, I will be looking at, can a company be large but also agile? Can a company have the resources of a multinational but also have the speed and agility of a startup? So you start with Nokia and Motorola. They were the market leaders of the feature phones, but they never transitioned to be the market leaders of a smartphone that was taken out by the likes of Apple and Samsung. Then of course you have Nokia, and then of course IBM was the leader of the personal computing hardware, but it never transitioned to be the market leader of personal computing software that was taken out by Microsoft. But then Microsoft itself was the market leader of personal computing software, but it never transitioned to be the market leader of that is market leader. Microsoft was the market leader of personal computing software, but it never transitioned to be the market leader of that is the market leader of internet search. That was taken up by Google, which was the market leader of internet search. Maybe the internet as we know it, but it never transitioned to be the market leader of social media. That was taken up by the likes of that is Facebook, X, Snapchat, and of course the likes of YouTube and TikTok. But of course, the market leader of TikTok, that is the market leader of social media, they will not be the market leaders of 3D augmented reality, or basically a person across the screen will seem as though they are in the same room as we do. That will append online commerce, online shopping, online dating, online teaching, online education, online learning, and of course online telemedicine. So that is it on how. But then I think for economists, for capitalists, they say this is great. The fact that a $1 trillion company can be taken down. The fact that a $1 trillion company can be taken down by a small nimble startup. That shows capitalism is working because its work is to reassign inefficient resources, to reassign inefficient resources. But then for a business leader, that is scary, that you could be having a cash balance of billions of dollars, $200 billion or $300 billion, but then you are removed from incumbency of a market by a small nimble player. That shows that and then the market are under upheaval. So that's it for now. Bye for now, till the next time. Bye for now. And remember, you can get my two books. One of them, The 1% Continent, How Africa Can Rise Up, that is a get to preview it. And then the other book is Give Us Your Best and Brightest, How Does Africa Solve Brain Drain. So that's it. And that's it for now. Thank you. Please remember to like and subscribe. Bye for now, till the next time. Bye for now.